A little bit about Mary. She is a South Sudanese refugee and is now the UNHCR's Goodwill Ambassador, which is the UN's Refugee Agency. After fleeing her war-torn country as a child, she found security and hope in attending school in the Kakuma Refugee Camp in Kenya. She has since become a teacher of young refugees in her community and sees education as an essential tool for rebuilding lives and empowering a generation of girls who are too often denied entrance into the classroom. Mary is currently pursuing further studies as part of a scholarship program at a university in the United States. Mary has said, and I quote, "For the child of war, an education can turn their tears of loss into a passion for peace." As we approach Passover and the celebration of the Jewish people's freedom from Egypt, we should remember and remind ourselves that our ancient journey is repeated time and again into our very present day. Journeying from oppression to freedom continues. That is only part of what we can learn from Mary. So please join me in welcoming her to the Bima. And again, after she shares her story, we will have an opportunity to ask questions. Mary? Which side do you want?
The tall side.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay.
We had a whole discussion about, which would be better fitted for her.
Yes.
I'm going to make sure you're on camera.
Thank you. Exodus. The manger couldn't protect you from fleeing. Passover comes, and I watch you on the film age UN screen. I relive a journey across the Nile. The manger couldn't save you. I plague every day, hoping for the last plague to finally release me. Dead bodies turn our water red, yet the last plague doesn't come. Red Sea. We've parted sea, drowned, desert we've meandered, but the sea still calls us in, drowns us down. The Red Sea never left us. Canaan. Will I make it to Canaan? Will I make it to the promised land? You make it to Canaan. I don't. Is my screen lying to me? Will I ever reach Canaan? Every day growing up in Kakuma Refugee Camp, I watched the 10 Commandments, the movie, on a large screen from the film 8 screens. And as I watched Moses go on that hill in Mount Sinai, that's how we pronounce it, I see him come down with the 10 Commandments on the scroll. And yet the Israelites stay in the desert for 40 more years. Round and round they go. And it takes a long time for them to make it to the promised land. And as I watch this movie, as I watch the journey of Israelites from when Moses is born and placed in a manger and taken in by Pharaoh and wife and being raised, I ask myself, will my journey become like his? Will I ever make it to the promised land? I see him growing up in a palace, defying the Egyptians and fleeing to the Sinai Peninsula. For 40 years, he decides to make his own life, marries his wife, but he receives that calling of, you have to come back and save the Israelites. I try to relate this story to my own. Every day, I sleep on it. And my journey, or like the entire story reminds me of a journey that is full of hopelessness, a journey that is full of hope, and a journey that is possible. Now, Mary Maker's story started from Chukudum, my small town in South Sudan. Now, probably you've heard of South Sudan, the country that has had war since the 40s. And we've been in a civil war until 2011 when we finally got independence and we were declared an independent state. Well, I became a result of war. When I was born in Chukudum, it was a beautiful town. My parents were fishermen, my mom mostly. So we'd wake up, go across the Nile, get our food, come back. We had a family, a whole dynamic. My mom would sing us lullaby in Arabic. My father would remind us that we are Muslims to be able to survive. And finally, this little home, this beautiful home, is taken away from me as a child. And I become the worst thing that I feared, a refugee. We first fled South Sudan into Ethiopia, in Gambela. When we got into this refugee camp, the camps were full. Thousands of refugees fleeing not only from Sudan, but also from Kenya, from Eritrea, from Ethiopia within itself. We find ourselves in this little cocoon, all of us, scared, hating the name, the refugee. The camp was full, so we had to leave and walk for miles and miles from Ethiopia back to Sudan, the country that we first fled from, trying to seek safety. Now, every country or every village we crossed saw us as a threat. You shouldn't be here. This is not your space. And every time I was in the camp as a child, you're going through a journey. You have no idea what's going on. You just know you're getting displaced and you're learning languages after languages. You move from one village to the other and you have to assimilate and adapt. I hated it. I hated adapting. I hated languages. But I was having fun also. I'm like, okay, so who are we meeting next? To me, as a child, that was fun. To my mother, that was exodus. That was having to leave, having to assimilate, not knowing where your next meal is going to be. And I know the world right now is starting to understand who is a refugee, but has the world really understood who is a refugee? As I watched the 10 Commandments in my sheets of sponges that make up a mattress and my mosquito net tucked in, sleeping outside, watching the stars, I ruminate, when will I get out of this wilderness? When will I finally see my promised land and my promise come to me? When I came to the camp, I felt like it was paradise because there was no gunshots. I didn't have to watch my mother dig up a trench so that we can all jump in to avoid the antinovs that were bombing our lands. The smell of war. I didn't have to watch my cousin walk across the landfills and cross a landmine, and that's the end of his life. I had to overcome that trauma as a child. I find myself in these refugee camps with 200s of kids together in a tiny classroom, squished together, but I was happy. Is this the beginning of my promised land? When my mother first enrolled me in school, I thought she was abandoning me there. I had watched parents in the war having to choose to leave their children rather than see them die. And here I am in a tiny classroom, watching the teachers sing to us the letters of the alphabet in English, and I'm tired of learning languages, and I have to learn it this time. And I ask myself, when is it going to end? Is this exodus ever going to end? But every Saturday, I would see my mother go to the fields. We had weddings in the camp. People don't believe there is actually happiness in the camp, but there is. Like, I would see my mom organize events, and she would dance her soul away, and I would come next by her, and we will dance. And the next day, we would go to the field posts or the distribution centers where they were giving out free clothes. My very first piece of outfit was this Nike t-shirt just written, "Just do it." And it was like oversized. And my mom would buy me these big shoes. Not buy me, they were distributed. So like she would put tissues at the top. So, and she's like, you're going to grow out of it. And I was having fun. I'm like, okay, this is good. Now I have my very first outfit. I have shoes. I'm having a good time. But every night, my uncle will call us around the fireplace. And they will tell us stories of them being soldiers, of them being fathers and men that were respected, and them having to lose that identity and being reduced to becoming the refugee. It didn't sink in. It didn't sink in for me. And my mother would be like, we are not supposed to be in the refugee camp. It is a temporal space. Well, those few nights of listening to stories at my mother's bedside turned into 10 months, into 1 year, into 10 years. And I watch people die in the camp, and I know I'm stuck in here. Is my Canaan ever coming? Kakuma Refugee Camp is located in northwestern part of Kenya, a dry area. It's semi-arid. The highest or the lowest temperature that it has ever gotten is 70 degrees. We have 100 degrees, no electricity until today. The only few people that own shops, or the Arab shops that are in the camp, have electricity. You have to pay to charge your phone and everything that you want running. It's secluded from the rest of the country, and so getting around is a process. For you to leave the camp, you have to show documentation. I hate documentation. And every time when I wanted to leave the camp, I either have to sneak out or have to have that paper stamped for me to leave. How is this the kind of life I want to live? How is my mother going through this? Every night again, as we listen to stories, I see my mom and my aunt turn on the radio to listen to the news. What's happening in Sudan? Is it safe now? Should I go back? Is it safe? And I would see a messenger that has tried to cross the borders to go back to Sudan come in with a list of names of people that have died. And all my relatives would come and check. Did I lose the person I left behind? Are they gone? There's no coming out. The camp becomes this cycle where you stay in, day out, wishing to come out. And for me, I had to save myself through education. I know it's really weird to talk about education in a church setting, or like in a synagogue setting. But that became a hope for me, having to study day and night to become the top student. But even after doing that, I graduated high school in 2015. I can't afford college. I can't afford anything. I lost my parents in 2009. And when I lost them, I thought all my hope had gone. I have 3 younger sisters, and as a 14-year-old at that age, I know I have to become the mother to them. I leave school, and I become their full-time parent. Well, I'm still a teenager. I still went to school, but for like 2 hours or so. How do you win? How do you win in such a system? It's the wilderness all over again. Nothing is moving forward. Nothing is coming for you. And I remember when I graduated in 2015, I wanted to change the status quo. So I went back to the camp to teach. Started teaching kids, and I was asking myself, am I lying to them? Because I'm not a trained teacher. But what teacher is going to decide to teach in a wilderness? Who is going to accept to teach in a refugee camp where we have thousands and thousands of students in a classroom with 7 textbooks? Now, Kakuma Refugee Camp, to put it in your context, have a population of 200,000 refugees coming from 10+ countries, different nationalities, all of them trying to learn languages again, trying to learn Swahili, which is the main language in Kenya, and also trying to learn English. The moment you come to the camp, it's really hard to gain your identity back. No one sees you as the soldier that fought bravely. No one sees you as the teacher that taught in your village or in your community. Everything has been reduced to becoming the refugee. Now, most of the people don't know who refugees are. The refugee is you. It's me. It's one day you're in your house and there's an earthquake and you don't have your home anymore. It's being displaced by hurricanes. It's having to leave your home and having to find a new home. It's having to assimilate and to find yourself all over again. Every time when I was looking at Exodus, like I've been reading the Bible since I was a kid, and I was looking at Exodus, and the one part that really resonates with me through the entire journey or the whole Passover, the Passover wouldn't have started if Moses didn't go back. He remembered who he had left behind. And during that time, it was a struggle to even bring the people along with him, right? It started with the plagues, and even the plagues did not convince Pharaoh. And finally, the last plague, they are released. But they are released, and a new struggle begins. And it's another wilderness before they finally make it to the promised land. I know Moses didn't make it, but they made it. Now, how do I go back and help in that? I know I speak on behalf of so many refugees around the world currently as a Goodwill ambassador. But every time I have to remind everyone in the room that my story is a glimpse of so many other refugee stories. My story is the story of success. I got out. I got out of the camp, and I finally made it to college. I graduate in 2 months. I graduate this May. And every time I think about me graduating, that is the girl that had to cross the borderline to come to the camp, not having no hope, knowing that this new identity, she's going to carry it on till the end. Now, how do I use this identity to bring those that have been displaced like me to feel like they are a part of something? As I said, the refugee might be you, it might be me. Who is that person next to you? Like, who is that neighbor that needs you every day? That wants you to see them in their space? That wants you to actually see them and acknowledge them in their space? I know most people ask me, so Mary, how do we join the movement of helping refugees around the world? And I'm like, there's so many people around you that need you. That's where the help starts. That's where you start to play the role of Moses in your life. How do I give back to those around me? How do I see them? And it can start by teaching kids or tutoring. It can start by sharing resources and channeling them to things that they can hold on to. It can start by those prayer sessions and having to call in that person that you know is going through a rough time and working with them and making them feel seen and making them feel warm and welcomed. For me, I chose to give back in different ways. I started a nonprofit, Elimisha Kakuma, where I train kids to know their options to apply for universities abroad. And I started it in my dorm room. And within 2 years, we have students currently finishing their freshman year in Dartmouth, University of Tulsa, New Hampshire, Trinity College. I have students in Canada, and that makes me happy. That is me coming back. That is me giving back. That is me seeing those students and letting them know that I see you, I invest in you. Now, how do you do that to people around you? How do you make them reach their Canaan? You might not make it to the promised land, but can you make them reach their promised land? Can you be that hope for them? Can you give them that light? I know I watched the 10 Commandments on a screen, on a giant screen from the UN TVs, but it gave me a lesson that my exodus might still be on. I might not make it to the promised land, but I for sure know how to give back to to those that need me. Thank you.
Mary, thank you so much. I'll help navigate the questions, okay? So, Shira, for those who have questions, just raise your hand, and we have a microphone so that you can, so that way they can hear you online. Bonnie?
Mary, congratulations on your accomplishment. I'm so proud of you. So where are you at college, and do you have family here with you to come to the graduation?
Yes, so I go to St. Olaf College in Minnesota, Midwest. I know it's crazy to move all the way from the refugee camp, which is 100 degrees to, I actually left last night and it was negative something, so it's a crazy mix. And when I first came in, I was really stressed. It's a whole new world. You're coming from a refugee camp that is so secluded to Minnesota, and I got matched with a host family, Kristen and Jeff. And they welcomed me. They are alumni from St. Olaf College. They went to St. Olaf in the 80s. And they welcomed me into their house. Even that small gesture of having to come to the airport to pick me up, and I was cold and it was 70 degrees and they're like, oh boy, how is she going to make it through the rest of the semester? That small act of having to welcome me to their house for Thanksgiving, for Christmas and any other thing that is happening made me really feel warm and welcomed. To even watching Minnesotans ice fishing, I'm like, what is that? But it's just becoming a part of a community that makes me really feel happy, and therefore sure coming to my graduation. So I'm really excited for that.
Other questions? Suzanne?
Congratulations, Mary. Just out of curiosity, where are your sisters now? And how did you make the journey out of the Sudan to get to the United States? In other words, who helped you apply to college and make that journey? Who was your mentor?
So my younger sisters are still in the camp. They were born in the camp. So I have to support them from here. And it's still, immigration is, oh God, it's it's one of the hardest things, especially when it's in the hands of politicians. It really becomes really hard to navigate, and I'm still navigating it. Yes, and coming from Sudan, I basically moved and migrated with my mother and my younger sister. So we left my hometown, Chukudum. We went to Ethiopia. The Ethiopian camps was so congested. So we went down to Kenya. This is walking this took months and probably a year to finally make it to Kakuma Refugee Camp in Kenya. And from the camp, as I was explaining the situation, it's really hard to get an education within the camp because of lack of resources. There are no teachers that want to work in a refugee camp, or even textbooks and things like that. And when I finally graduated from high school, I'm basically among the so many thousands of refugees that end up having the dead end of not having to go to college because you can't afford college to begin with. So I graduated in 2015, but I finally started college in 2019. That is 4 years that can lead to hopelessness, 4 years of having to ruminate and think and ask, is there a sign out there for me to ever make it? So it was a crazy journey, and in 2018, I got into a program in Rwanda. It's called Bridge to Rwanda, and they said, this is not a scholarship, this is only a 16-month program. We are going to train you on learning how to type, how to read, and how to apply for universities using the Common App, So I had to study for SATs and all these things. At the back of my mind, they told me, if you don't perform, we'll take you back to the camp. So I had no choice. Those 16 months, I had to do everything possible. And I finally got accepted into St. Olaf College. I didn't know where I was going. I had no idea where is Minnesota or anything like that. I was just excited that I get to go to school, that I get to go to college. So I was like, let's go, Minnesota. Yeah, so that's how I ended up in the United States.
Can I just add something? Since we had dinner together beforehand, and I mean, the college you're at has a drama and singing program that you're a part of, so yes.
Yes, I'm a theater student, so probably you might see a little bit of that. Yeah.
And also you're here on an asylum visa.
Yes, I'm here on an asylum visa, which is, yeah.
Okay. Question, back, Brad. Wait for the microphone, please.
I was going to ask you about your sisters, but she already asked. But what a great story of inspiration and perseverance. Keep telling it. It's really impressive. Very proud of you.
Thank you.
Bruce, you had...
Oh, God.
Come on, Shira.
Really have to
Like everyone else has said, just an amazing, inspiring story. You know, congratulations to you. What are your immediate plans for once you graduate? What actually is next? Do you have plans? Has things been set up?
He runs a theater, by the way.
Yeah. I'm an artistic director of a theater here on Long Island.
I need to talk to you nicely. I need to talk to you
Auditions awaiting.
Because you know what I've been saying every time anyone asks me, so what are you going to do after graduation? I'm like, I'm going to move to New York and rule the world. Is that something that I can write in a resume? But yes, I graduate in May, and I'm planning to come to New York. I was like, I might have to sell a kidney or two to be able to survive this lifestyle, you know, because of how expensive New York is. But like, at least I want to come try, you know, audition for stuff, do a lot of theater. I like writing. I've written so many plays, and I run so many plays at St. Olaf. So I feel like at first theater was really intimidating because actually my family doesn't know what I'm studying. They know I'm doing biology and chemistry. And in 2 months, I'll be like, it was theater. It was theater all along. So I'm really scared for them. But I'm planning to move to New York. I don't know how, but I will be here.
You should, well, when you make your way to New York, you, of course, have a congregation that will welcome you, and a place for all the Jewish holidays, at least.
I'm curious to know how you made your way here. How did you end up here
In
Oyster Bay?
So it was, I think Brian had heard, the president of the synagogue, Brian, had heard Mary speak at another occasion and invited her, helped to organize the invitation to come to the congregation. But physically, she took a plane.
Yes, and I met Brian. I met Brian in a Barcelona event. So as I said, I'm a Goodwill ambassador for the UN. So I come to New York a lot to come to speak to different organizations that are partnering with UNHCR. So and I met him there. I was meeting so many people. I'm like, okay, hi, how you all doing? So he followed up. He's like, hey, Mary, would you come talk to my congregation? I'm like, heck yeah, New York. Yeah.
Not to be rude, is there any Judaism in Sudan?
I don't know so many religions in Sudan, but I know the southern part is majority Christians, and this is because of the split of the country. The north is Islam and is Muslim, and the south is Christian because of the missionaries that came. I know there's Baptist churches. I know we have Seventh-day Adventists. I don't know if there is Judaism, but it might be there. I just didn't grow up in the country, which makes things really shaky and a little bit hard to know. But I know there's thousands of churches represented in the South.
Stuart?
Were there additional challenges when you were growing up with the fact that you were female?
Oh, lots of them. Every time, like right now, my uncle, he's 80 years old. He would be the same age as my dad if he was alive today. And he's like, so when are you getting kids? When is that happening? I'm like, I just finished high school. And he's like again, so now you're finishing college. You have to have kids, a husband, because how are you going to fend for yourself, you know? And sometimes it's really hard to explain and be like, okay, I have a different journey than, my mom was married at the age of 13. And being married at 13, most South Sudanese do get married at that age or like 16. I know right now things are changing and there is a big movement to end child marriage. But it's really hard to be able to convince my family otherwise. Because I'm 26 and they're like, no one is going to marry you. This is the end. So there's a lot on that kind of front. And there's also like just the problem of being a woman in South Sudan where you're supposed to be quiet, lower your head down, walk in a specific style, dress certain modest in a certain way. Don't be artistic at all. No, do not join the theaters. That's why I have not told them I'm doing theater and and arts. And I was unfortunately born an extrovert. So you can imagine being this loud in a community that asks you to be silent and not to talk or speak your mind out. So I think that has been like my biggest challenge, where I have had to be silent, even though I wrote a lot of plays that was targeting everyone in the audience, and they would see them, so I'm like, I hope you all learned something today. You know, so I used theater as a tool to be able to overcome a lot of things that I saw growing up. You know, growing up in a space or like in an underserved community where things like, you know, menstrual products are not accessible at all, where you have to not go to classroom in those days until the end, and then you have to go back to school, where I have to drop out and have to help my younger sisters because everyone sees you as the female figure that has to become the mother all of a sudden. Having to watch my friends getting married because they are losing hope. When you're in a refugee camp and nothing is happening to you, then marriage becomes a solution to you, and then it becomes a cycle of poverty where you have staircase of kids, you know, after kids, and you don't have rights, and you can't speak your mind out. And my heart still aches for that kind of system. Yeah.
Shira.
How did you discover your passion for theater, and how did you make time or even discover your passions while you were in the refugee camp?
When I was a kid, I used to be afraid of witches. There was literally a whole witch hunt, you know, anyone practicing that. But there's something crazy about that I loved. One woman that is feared by the entire community, you know. So like what I would kind of do, like, I started to write my plays around that kind of power dynamic, you know. Of course, I didn't have skills to write a play, so I would gather all the kids around, you know, playing or like playing house with the kids. It's basically theater when you think about it. So I would be like, okay, you're the father, you're the mother, you're the child, so I'm going to send you to the shop, you know, or like, and start to bring in aspects of community into playing house every day. And I'm like, I really enjoy this. I enjoy telling people what they should be like, who they should be, and having to embody an entire character. I was dreaming through theater. So most of the time, I would give myself the best role. I would have a happy ending. I would have a happy ending in a play. And I loved that. It started to become a space for me to heal all my traumas and to feel alive again, and to shun community on so many things. Most of my plays, later on, my mom was shunned in the community because of giving birth to girls only, because I have 3 sisters plus myself, 4 of us. And so I wrote plays around, I would involve God. That was wicked of me. But I would involve God where, like, let's say, I stayed with my stepmother and she was the Cinderella movie. And so I would put her in my plays and small girls and her mistreating us, and then God striking her with thunder and lightning. I'm like, I hope you all learned that God is on my side, or like there's a higher power out there that is going to be there for me, you know. And it becomes like a fun part. And I'm like, I love theater. I love drama. You know, like anytime like we would have something fun. I always wanted to have something fun, even in bleak times. You know, what is the positive thing, like out of us sleeping outside? We could see the Milky Way outside, sleeping outside. You know, we could watch so many things. We would go down the slide. So there was this hill in the camp. When it rained, it's all clay, so it's smooth. Just go and slide down there. It was really fun, you know, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to mop around. I'm going to have fun with this. And that's how theater came in. Yeah.
It's fascinating. The theater provided hope.
Back to this theater thing again. I was going to ask you before you even mentioned, after I asked my question before, have you written plays? I was going to ask that, and now you've answered it. You have the most amazing opportunity to write an incredible play. Your stories are so visual. Just talking about going out and looking at the stars. I mean, I can envision this would be an incredible, incredible play, an incredible hit. I'm telling you, you tell your story through a play just the way you describe your experiences, it shows, I can feel the talent you have. You know, not just your acting talent, but also the talent that you have in transcribing your story into a living play.
Yeah.
And that, to me, I think is something that you kind of should consider, because that's going to go places. And it'll be a real important message to get out.
Yeah.
I just had to say that.
Bruce, thank you for the offer to produce the play. So what I'd like to do is just to offer a very special thank you for teaching us and sharing your personal story and just putting it out there for us so that we could learn about your experience and grow from that, and to offer us lessons about how we can do better. And we can also learn from our story, the Passover story, that we often tell like it's just a long time ago, but it's not present. So thank you for reminding of that lesson for today. We wish you tremendous luck. We hope you will see our synagogue as sort of a home that's nearby to New York City, so that you're always welcome here. And I just want to thank you again and just invite you to join us for the ONEG afterwards, and people can ask questions and talk to you and thank you at the ONEG. So thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you.